This episode is sponsored by AI Your Superpower. If your business feels stuck or overwhelmed, the answer isn't working harder. It is working smarter with AI. Take our free personalized assessment, the AI Opportunity Finder, and discover exactly how AI can save you time, profits, and simplify your operations. Plus, get our exclusive AI toolkit to help you start fast. Visit start.aiyoursuperpower.com to find your best AI opportunities and book your free discovery call. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Happiness by Habit. I am your host, Silvana Pimentel, and today's episode is of those rare gems that fuses creativity, gift, wellness, and wisdom into one powerful conversation. Our guest is a very special guest. She's Pamela Vélez, a senior level corporate fashion designer, a small business owner, and certified health and wellness advocate. She's known for her innovative denim work at J.C. Penney, her entrepreneurial leadership with Viking Hourglass LLC, and her deeply personal mission to empower others facing autoimmune diseases through patient-driven healing. Her mantra, never stop learning. And trust me, you will feel the depth of that wisdom in everything she shares today. Pamela wears many hats, literally and figuratively, and lives with humility and heart and relentless pursuit of meaningful impact. So grab your tea, your coffee, or green juice, and let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, dear Pam.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Hola.
Eh, Hola, hola.
Thank
So
you for
happy to
having
have
me.
you.
Yeah, thank
Yes,
you. Yes, this is really fun.
absolutely.
I'm excited.
Wonderful. So are we, Pam. Let's start at the beginning. How did your journey in fashion begin? And what was the first thing that sparked your love for design?
Okay, yes. So when I was little, I used to always we didn't have computers or all that at the time. So I used to spend time in my room. My mom bought me an encyclopedia set. And I had one of those in my room when I was young. And when I was bored, I read a lot of books and I would spend time looking at the encyclopedias. And I tend to just like open them and I would just randomly pick things, or maybe I saw something on TV and I would look it up. And, once I would open it, I would get lost and I would want to look at more things. And so I would go down a rabbit hole, as they say, of information. And I was just always really fascinated by history. History was a big interest since I was a little girl. And I think I attribute a lot of that to my grandmother.
Mhm.
My grandma Garza, which is my mom's mom. She really was the one, ever since I was a young age, that taught me how to appreciate vintage. Um,
Mm.
Taught me what vintage was. She taught me about vintage, and I connected it to my interest of history. So from a really young age, I could identify different eras. I'd see things on TV and I knew what era that was from, what years those that came from. And then I started to sort of connect that to clothing. And then I really
Mhm.
liked being able to identify where I saw this before. So I would say, oh, I seen this on TV and that was from the 1950s. Or I would see this and I would talk to my grandmother a lot about it. And she loved to go to garage sales and loved to go to, antique sales. And we would go, and I remember her, just always having like a really deep interest. And I felt that in me as well.
Mhm.
So when the funny thing is, or the interesting thing is when I was in high school, so fast forward a little bit,
Mhm.
I'm from Laredo, Texas. I'm from Laredo, Texas. I'm from a border town. I was born and raised there, and I lived there till I was about 18.
Mhm.
I was fortunate enough. I was able to go to a really good public school there. We had a public school that was a magnet school, and it was
Mhm.
specialized in medical field,
Okay.
health and sciences. And growing up, I mean, I love school in general. I was very, very into all the subjects.
Mhm.
And science I loved as well. So I went to this high school and I did the medical program. And the plan, of course, after you're done there is you go and you study medicine, pre-med, whatever the case may be. But I completed it, but when I was done, I didn't quite feel right. I didn't quite feel like that was my calling.
Mhm.
I didn't know what my calling was, so I wanted to use the next couple of years to sort of explore and see what college had to offer.
Mhm.
So I decided, I continued. I went to school, but I was always interested in it. So this kind of connects me later to my health journey. But that's sort of where that was sparked.
Uh-huh.
So I was in college. I went to college in San Antonio for a little while, and I
Mhm.
used to have a part-time job at an art supply store because
Mm.
I did like art, and I took it as an elective in college, and I was enjoying it, and I said, "I'm gonna go work at an art supply store so I can get free supplies." Free.
Yeah,
I would pay
for
for it, but I
sure.
would get
Good
free supplies.
idea.
Yeah, or I get to try new supplies out. So I went
Right.
to do that, and I one day we were just bored, and I was doodling and I was sketching, and I had a coworker who came to me and said he saw what I was sketching, and at the time I was sketching clothes. And he
Mm.
said, "What do you?" He's like, "You're sketching clothes," and I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Man, well, you should go study fashion design." And I think that was honestly the first time I'd ever even heard that was something I should do. 'Cause mind you, I mean, in my household, I mean, arts was not really a conversation.
Uh-huh.
Encouraged, I guess.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so I said, "Well, they have schools for that?" And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "They got schools for that." And I said, "Well, I should really, do some research." And this was like 1999, right? 2000,
Uh-huh.
the internet was kind of barely getting there.
I know, I hear you. I
And so
remember.
I did some research, and I found a fashion school in Chicago,
Mm.
and I looked at other places, but Chicago stuck with me because growing up, my parents used to take me on we used to go on family trips, and we'd do road trips. That was a big
Mm.
deal. We always did road trips,
Mm.
and one time they took us to Chicago, me and my brother.
Nice. Good
So
memories.
yeah, so when I saw it, I said, "You know what? Well, I've been to Chicago." I said, "I think I could go there and, go to school." And it's so crazy because I think about it now and I'm like, I don't know if I could see my kids doing the same thing where they're just like, "Just go." But I told my mom and my dad and I was like, I think this is what I want to try." And they supported me. And I enlisted, we, did all the things, got into it was a trade school, so it had fashion design in it. And yeah, I gave it a go. And I think what's interesting is I do attribute my grandma to this a lot because if it hadn't really been for her, maybe I wouldn't have been so interested in history and costume and clothing or travel in general. I mean, I think that was also something that was sparked when I was looking at those encyclopedias is I wanted to get out and see the world. So, of course, when you join when you do fashion design, you're like, I want to be a fashion designer. I want to be
Right.
people that have the stuff walking down the runway, and that's sort of, I think, every girl's or woman, man, whatever's dream when you think about fashion design, the glamorous
Mhm.
side, the fabulous side. So, of course, yes, all of that was in my brain. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna. That's what you do.
Right.
But I do feel like my love of history, is really what sparked my love of design now. And also just, when I think about history and I think about things like events that happen in history, plus you add the architectural history and buildings, and then you get clothing, like all of it together is always just been so fascinating for me.
Mm.
And as an adult, and many years later of having been in this industry for a while, like I can't go anywhere without taking a moment to like appreciate all these
Mhm.
little things. And, whether it's like, look at the shape of that building. Like, do you know why they make these columns this way? Oh, did you know where this was from? And so I just can't help myself. So it's like I find so much beauty in all kinds of things. And I think if I hadn't gone into design, I mean, maybe I wouldn't have been this way,
Oh
but
my
design
gosh.
design has had a lot to do with it, for sure, for sure.
I love it. I didn't know that history twist to your career. That's very, very
I always say
special.
I think I would be happy retiring as like a history teacher.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
that would
Uh,
definitely be a good.
so yeah, somebody's history, art history, costume design, like all of that would be
Right. Oh
mm,
my gosh, that can be
yeah,
very fun.
yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yes. You and I met at this amazing event at JCPenney, where you were launching the Hope and Wonder collection Vamos for 2025, right? This Latinitas event sponsored by JCPenney. Let's talk about that beautiful collection because really it was very special.
Yes. So I have been blessed to work with JCPenney for over 21 years. Okay. I've just completed 21 years
Wow,
with
that's
the
a lot.
company. And
You started when you were 5.
I was lucky. I did start right out of college. And that's a whole other story too of even
Yeah.
how I got to the job. I think, there's a lot to learn from my initial steps and just really putting myself out there and
Mm.
getting myself through the door, as they say.
I want to
But
hear that story too.
you wanna hear it? Okay.
Yes.
Well, you know, I will say because I wanna talk about the event. So with
Yes.
working with JCPenney, it wasn't until a little later in my career that we began to embrace each other's cultures more,
Mhm.
because of social media and because of, the times we live in. There was a lot more openness to talk about our cultures and celebrate our cultures, and I was very happy when JCPenney came to the table saying they wanted, us to spearhead that and really have our own associates, do our part to help educate our associates and our customers and also educate the company about our cultures and our communities. And so that leads me to being part of our company's business resource team. So, apart from the design job that I do, I
Mhm.
also am part of a business resource team. And I specifically am part of the one that is tied to our Hispanic customers and associates. And
Mm.
they actually leaned on us to help find. We knew that we wanted our organization to benefit a philanthropic organization. So they leaned on us to find them. No, they didn't tell us. Like we could go out and we could really investigate and kind of get to know some organizations and really kind of come to the table and say, hey, this is who we think we want to support.
Mhm.
And of course, I stumbled upon Latinitas. I was doing
Mhm.
some research and I really loved what they were doing and I loved their mission. I mean, it didn't hurt that they were in our backyard since we're located
Right.
in Plano. And I knew that since we were a home office based organization, like, our heart was here. The heartbeat was there. We wanted to make sure there was something that we knew we could all have access to
Mhm.
and be able to actually participate in person and be there like we have been with Latinitas. And so once we kind of got the BRT rolling, we started doing the Hope and Wonder collection. So that is
Mm.
the specific cultural collection of clothing and gifts that we debuted during, for example, Hispanic Heritage Month. And they have others. They have for Pride, they have for the Asian community, we also have for the Jewish community. So it's wonderful to be able to work for a company like that that just really embraces, everybody's all walks of life, and where we all come from and how we celebrate and how we want to educate. And so, yes, some of the events we get to do with Latinitas was like the one where I met you, Silvana, in San
Yeah.
Antonio. And, I think the wonderful thing about those events is that, I work in the home office, so I am more of I'm a corporate leader. There's nothing like getting into the stores and truly meeting the people that truly make the business go. I mean,
Mhm.
we run it like we're the machines and we're doing things and we're making things run, but without our store people and without our customers, we wouldn't be here. So I think that part of the business resource team, or a big part for me really, is how we connect the home office to the stores and also the customers, so that way we're constantly getting a firsthand view of, who our customers really are, and also listening to them and getting a chance to meet them and, maybe hear their story, or maybe they've got something they want to teach us, or maybe they've got a suggestion. I think that that's also really important to kind of always have your ear to the ground. And that's To me, there's like no better way to do that than to just make a fun event, go to the store, make a fun event, have people come in and, network and talk, So I think JCPenney has done an amazing job at just allowing the associates to kind of drive the initiative.
Mhm.
And that's sort of how I ended, that's how we met.
That's how we met, and I really got the feeling from that event. Well, first of all, it was an amazing event. We had so much fun. The girls from Latinitas were there. Some of
Yeah.
the students. I brought my own Latinita, my daughter
Mm.
Sabrina, who was amazed with your collection, and she was really. You gave us a sneak peek of the other new collections that you're bringing to life, and so it was a really, really beautiful experience. And kudos to JCPenney and to you because of this experience and this support that you're giving to Latinitas and to the Hispanic youth, right? Especially, this is
Yeah.
really special.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the things too when JCPenney wanted to start these business resource teams. One of the main things I had on my mind was we needed to engage with the youth, right? Like we have to do things obviously for our associates and for our customers, but what are we doing, right, for our youth?
Mm,
And trying to get in front of them, mentoring them, I think that's really important. Talking about our jobs, so that they can kind of see what is out there, what are the possibilities. I'll kind of segue into how I got into the job, right? I mean, when I and this ties back because, you almost wish I had somebody like that when I was,
mm,
fresh out of college and looking for a job. But when I left Chicago, I moved back to Texas because my family was here, not in
mhm,
North Texas, but my family is in Texas, and I felt as long as I'm in Texas, I'm close by, and
mhm,
used to driving everywhere. So I said, I could always go see my parents.
mhm,
And so I came to Dallas. And
mm,
actually I had only been to Dallas one time when I was young. We did a road trip up here once
mhm,
to a
mhm,
water park. And I said, well, if I'm gonna go anywhere, I think Dallas might be the best because it's big, right? And
mhm, mhm,
there might be way more opportunities for me there. So I came to Dallas and I looked for a job. And immediately I got a job working at Nordstrom, the store at the
mhm,
Galleria.
mhm,
And when I went, because I had just come out of design or come out of fashion design, I found out I somehow I can't remember how I found out, but I must have been researching and I found out that they had at the time they had a buying unit. So they used to
mm.
have some buyers and they were in the basement of the Galleria at Nordstrom, I think. That's what I remember. I never saw it. I never got to meet them, but
Rumor has it that it was the case, but
yeah, rumor has it that was the case. So I said, "Oh, well, let me go to Nordstrom and see, what I could get there." And what I applied for was in the tailoring department. And I
mm,
said, okay, I just studied the fashion design. I know how to sew. I'm not perfect. I'm not that great yet. I'm still really young. I'm fresh. Maybe being in the tailoring department would teach me something. And
yeah,
that's my mentality. Like, I don't
right,
know. I was born that way, I guess. But in my mind, I was always thinking to myself, well, if anything, I'm going to learn something out of this. Right.
right,
So
right,
I went and I was like, I don't want to do sales. Like, I don't want to be standing on the sales floor. I want to be in the back doing something. Right.
mhm,
So, they gave me a job as a data input, and so basically, I was sitting in front of a computer, and I was putting in numbers and information from all the tickets for people who would come and get their clothes tailored. Because at
okay,
Nordstrom, you could buy your pants, and then they would come tailor them, and you pick them up, like, a few days later. And so I didn't get to do the tailoring.
you
I
were that
was
close.
close. So on my breaks, I would walk around and I would go talk to everybody. And of course, in this area is where all the immigrants are. I mean,
Mm, yeah,
Hispanos,
yeah, yeah,
there were Asiaticos. I mean, it was a mix, but
uh-huh,
it was a place where I was like, okay, I'm familiar. I can talk to some of these people. I can speak Spanish. I can, I I could they could teach me something. So on my breaks, I would kind of go around and I would chit chat with people. And then finally, this one, I can't remember if it was a woman or a man, maybe it was both. They taught me how to do a special technique on hemming that I had never seen before, but it was specifically for denim. And so I said I wanted to learn. So they taught me. So then I started doing my own. We called it the tricky hem, and basically I started doing it at home. So I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh my geez, I was like, oh my god, because I'm chaparra, right? I'm very short. So I was like, oh my god, now I know how to do the right way.
Right.
And I would tell my friends and I'd be like, I'll do your hems. And so I learned how to do the hem. One day I was driving home, and again, I think, I probably had only been in Dallas for 6 months. I was driving home and I saw a sign. I was driving on Highway 635 and I saw a sign. And the sign was it said Intercontinental University. And I remember that the school that I went to in Chicago was affiliated with that school.
Okay.
And so I said, that's like the same school I went to. I said, I wonder if they have like fashion design program in there. I mean, they must have it, right? So what did I do? The next day, I had a day off. I grabbed my portfolio that I made in school. I
Mhm.
had a resume that wasn't that extensive, but I walked into the school and because I thought in my head, well, maybe they need help. I said, maybe they need an assistant, somebody that could help. Maybe I could probably help some of the students learn how to sew. We could, maybe I could teach them how to make a portfolio. I mean, my mind was just like, I can do something, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
So I
That would be a
went.
good place. Yeah.
Yeah, I went and I said, "Can I please talk to the fashion director?" And then they said, "Okay, wait a minute." And then they called her. Her name was Charisse. And she came out and she sat down with me and she said, what are you here for? And I said, well, I'm just looking to, I'm looking for a job. I said, and I have a fashion design degree and I'm like, do you need any help? I was like, I could do stuff here. And she said, well, the thing is everybody we hire has to, for like teaching at least, has to have a master's degree. I said, oh, well, I don't have a master's degree. I said, but okay, I said, I just, didn't hurt. Like, let me just
Yeah.
see what you guys got. Well, she says, hey, but you know what? She goes, did you know JC Penney's here? And I said, no, I didn't. She said, yeah. She says, their headquarters is here. And I said, really? And she said, yeah. She goes, I just left a design job to be the fashion director at the school. She goes, so I know they need help because I left. And I said, okay. And she said, I'm going to give you this information to someone, give her a call, and I'll let her know. And then,
Oh,
maybe. So I made a connection
huh?
and I got an interview. And at the time, the director who interviewed me, she said, look, I don't have a design. She goes, I don't have a design job, a role for you necessarily. She goes, but we do need somebody like to freelance. And I said, okay, I'll take it. I will do it. So I was working at Nordstrom on my certain days. And then I would go to Penny's and work at the headquarters as a freelancer. And I was
Mm-hmm.
sketching, putting, things together and stuff like that for them.
Things
Whatever
that
they
you
need.
love.
Yeah,
You were having fun, I'm sure.
whatever they needed, I was doing. I think at the time I was sketching bras and underwear.
Okay.
And so yeah, and so then finally, I did that for a few months, and then the director finally came to me and she said, "Hey, listen, I have a job for you, a permanent one." She goes, "'Cause I know you want a permanent job." She says, "But it's not in design." And I said, "Okay, what is it in?" And she said, "It's in product development," which is a little different. I
Mm.
know it sounds the same because at the end of the day, we're all designing and developing product, but in this case, it wasn't clothes. So she said, but it's for accessories. She says, so we have somebody needs a like an assistant. And I said, okay, I will take it. So I took the job, and I think again, I tie this back to just like my own natural, I guess, habit of always being really curious and like
Mhm.
just sort of like, "What's that?" and "What does that do?" And I was working, and every Monday I had to pull these sales reports. I'd
Uh-huh.
never pulled from a computer system. I'd never done it before, so I was sort of learning how to do it. There was something about the system that I kept on playing with it and looking at it, and I said, "I really wanna know, like, what does this mean?" I want to know what the reports mean. Like I'm pulling these reports, but I don't know what I'm reading. So JC Penney at the home office, they had training courses. So I signed up for a training course and I said, I want to learn more about these reports. I want to know what I'm reading. And I went and I happened to sit next to another gal who was taking the training course and we got to talking. And then she said, wait, she goes, she's like, you study fashion design? And I said, yes. And then she goes, do you know how to use this specific program that's for designing? And I said, yeah, I know how to use it. And she goes, "That's the area I'm working in right now." She says, "And I'm just like an assistant over there." She goes, "But they need a lot of help." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, I can help." I said, "I know how to use it." I'm like, "Who's your boss? Tell me the name and let's see if I can't get a meeting with him, right?" So she gave me the information. I sent an email. I think she also mentioned me. And then within like a week or two, I had a meeting on the calendar with the director who is over in the design
Mhm.
department.
Mhm.
And really it was really a meeting to kind of understand what a design department at a department store look like. I didn't even know. Remember, I'm only here thinking that if you're in fashion design, you're gonna have runway shows.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that was in your head. That's
Yeah, so I'm going,
different.
what does that look like? Like
Right.
what is being a designer look like in a corporate level? I mean, I've never heard of this. So I had my meeting with him and again, I was definitely the type of person too, or I've always been this way. I just couldn't show up empty-handed. I couldn't show up empty-handed. And I made a resume and I decorated it. And I mean, back and then it was very trendy for your resume to be kind of crafted and
Oh,
just like
wow.
it was cool and fun. We used to I one time I did a resume in a box and like you would open
Wow, really?
I know it sounds so
That's so
silly
cool.
now.
Definitely made an impression, I'm sure.
It sounds so crazy now when I think about it, but I had a lot of fun doing stuff like that, and so I came to that, and also did a little collection, drew a collection. I knew he was the director of Worthington, the brand Worthington at JCPenney, so
Mhm.
I was like, "I know he's Worthington, so I'm gonna do a little Worthington collection," and I pulled fabric and I color, and remember, I mean, I am working at Penny, so at this point, I already saw that the company had access to information. So I was like on my time off or my breaks, I was like looking at, fashion trend reports and looking at color. And I was like, ooh, this is so exciting because this is like school, like this is what
Right, yeah.
so yeah, I showed up with a collection and then he says, "You know what?" He said, "We are about to start a design trainee program." He says, "We want to build a design department here at Penny's." At the time, it was like probably 2 people. And
Mm.
so he said, "We want to grow." He's like, "And we want to start a design training program where we can get some students that are fresh out of college and kind of take them under our wing and show them how a corporate design business is run and how you can design for a private brand and learning all about that." And he said, "I think you'd be perfect for this." And I was like, "I will do it. I will do it." He goes,
My gosh.
"Basically what it is like an internship,
Huh?
but it's paid." Okay.
Yeah,
So music to my
perfect.
ears. I was like, "Oh, yes.
Right, hello,
Yes.
that's
I
perfect.
I will take this paid internship."
Uh-huh.
The only downside is that you may or may not get to keep your job. Like, if they deem that you're maybe don't cut it, you didn't get to stay. And
Yeah.
so
But that I guess that applies to anything, any job. That's so
yes,
that
it is. Yeah, so it was like a kind of like a mix of like Project Runway, remember that show?
hmm. Yeah.
And The Apprentice in a way,
Wow.
because we had projects and we had to complete them and we had to do presentations and we had to talk in front of leaders and I mean it was pretty intense. It was 6 months long. And well, I mean, fast forward, I got to keep my job.
I see that. Not only that, but you
Yeah.
grew
I
big
got to
time in
keep
the company. That's
I got to
awesome.
keep my job, yep, and I got a chance to I mean, after that, it was not smooth sailing, I guess, but I would say it was just like a world opened up of opportunity. It was I got a chance to travel the world. Like I got to go all kinds of places. I mean, my first trip was to South Korea and I was like, wow, like I never thought, and I was young. I was probably in my maybe mid 20s at the time. And, getting a chance to go over there and work with suppliers and factories and kind of learn all the ins and outs of what it takes to get things into stores was just an incredible experience. So I always tell that story because I'm like, people don't understand. Like, it was literally just me walking into a place and asking a question, and I think that that's something that I tell the youth all the time, like, especially when I go to the Latinitas camps and I do the
Mhm,
design
mhm.
camp with the girls, like, I try to explain, like, ask the questions, like, be really curious, like, don't worry about people thinking anything about you. If you're curious and you think you should be there or you might be interested in something, go for it. Know? It's definitely easier said than done. I mean, it really is.
But let's talk about that because you mentioned earlier how important would have been to have somebody, a mentor, when you were like beginning and at the beginning of your career, and that is the opportunity that we have at Latinitas because we can guide them or mentor them. The girls that they have big dreams and especially JCPenney and you you're part of this really cool initiative that within part of your cooperation with Latinitas or collaboration with Latinitas, you are part of their code, no, their camps, right? Their Latinitas camp for design, for fashion design. Let's talk about that because the day of the event, I love the fact that we had some of the girls that were part of this fashion design camp, and they were a little bit involved in the design of the actual pieces that were shown on the collection, right?
Hmm.
So let's talk about that. How you feel about being a guide and a mentor for these
So,
Latinitas?
I mean, I love it. I mean, obviously, I
Mm,
mentorship has, as I've gone in through my career, I would say that a lot of the mentors that I have found are outside of JCPenney. And that's okay. I do think there's something important, when you learn from people from other parts of different industries and just sort of, leaning on each other and trying to find great advice and information. So when we decided to work with Latinitas, right away I knew that this was going to be something that was going to be a way for me to give back in my way. And my way is mentorship. Again, I
mm,
cannot stress enough like how important that is for everybody to have that opportunity to be mentored and to have a mentor. Even with what I do at work currently, being part of the BRT, which has allowed me to work with like partners like Latinitas, it also allows me to work with others in the company that are younger than me, that are just coming in and just starting and really need guidance and want, and are hungry for the mentorship and, being able to work, also just to work with people who set an example for them of like, this is how you handle situations. This is how you can talk to people about this. This is how you can deliver feedback. This is how, all those kinds of things are so important to have. So then when we decided we were going to work with Latinitas, and of course, the tie to Latinitas is the Hope and Wonder collection. I had already built a network of coworkers that I knew would have equal amounts of passion to create something beautiful. And some of these girls are people that I have mentored, and we have developed, friendships and relationships because of that. And so what I did is I pulled all my gals together, and we put our heads together and we said, we want to, when we come up with our first Hope and Wonder collection that's representing Hispanic heritage, we want to make sure it's the most authentic thing, the most authentic collection that we could come up with that feels modern, feels relevant for us while still addressing some of our traditional likes and some of our and also being able to get together like that also opened the door for some of our Latino and Latina associates. They don't speak Spanish, but they're Latinos. Um, and maybe they don't feel at home everywhere. So here we opened up a community for them to say, we want everybody. We don't care. Some of us speak very well, some of us speak half and half, some of us don't speak at all. It's totally fine. What you have to say still really matters and should be included. And I tie that back to, the girls like at Latinitas, because it's important that they see from a young age that we are celebrating that. Like, we are celebrating that everybody's coming from a different angle and has been raised differently. However, we share a common thread. We're Hispanos. We like similar foods. We might say similar words. Maybe we don't. Music and even when we like brainstormed and talked about how we wanted the collection to evolve, it was important for us that we said we wanted to make sure all the fabrications that we use feel authentic to our cultures. So that means, we want to stay away from things that are super synthetic, like nothing that has like a lot of polyester, because that's not true to our cultures. You know,
Mm,
we have a history of weaving and textiles. And, it's important that we celebrate that and we try to stay true to it. So that was really important for us. And then when we started talking about and motifs and just everything that we wanted to include in the collection, we made sure we pulled things that we knew had symbolism in our cultures. For example, like the colibri. We look at things like mariposas and even specific flowers that we know are really important to our cultures. And I say cultures because I'm working with Puerto Rican, I'm working with Dominicanas, I'm working with Mexican. So, and I think, living in the US, we kind of blanket everything to being Mexican, and we know that it's not. So that was also really important, is that we're not just focused on one region, and we want to make everybody feel like, yes, like
represented.
yes, I feel represented and I've got a piece in there. So
Yeah, I
so
think
yeah.
mission accomplished for sure. The first words that came to mind when I saw the collection, authenticity, family, cultura. It was really beautiful, and one of the things I really love about the culture at JCPenney or at that event that I experienced was the amazing community among the employees, like
Mhm.
Hispanic were super represented, and I think that was a store. It was mentioned there too, also that most of the customers that go to that store are Hispanic as well, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
you guys did an amazing job with the collection, with the representation, and kudos to you. My daughter and I left the place or the event very inspired. My
That's good.
daughter, she's 9 years old, but she loves fashion design. And when she met you, and she was like, "Mommy, I wanna participate of the the camps or whatever you guys are doing."
Yeah.
She really wants to be part of it because it was that inspiration that you gave. So
Yeah.
kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I remember we did an event in San Antonio a couple years ago too at the Ingram
Mm.
Park Mall. And I think that was the first time that a couple of the campers came up to me and wanted to take a picture with me.
My God,
Or
yeah.
even at the camp, they say, "Can I get your autograph?" And I think it's so enduring, it's so sweet. What I take out of that is we have to remember, we didn't talk about this kind of stuff when I was young. Like, we
Mm.
didn't talk about design and we didn't talk about arts and getting a degree in art or, that kind of thing. So for them, I can understand where it feels sort of novel, it feels like, this person might be famous, but we're not, not like that at least. But I can understand that for them, it may seem like this maybe some sort of a far-fetched, very, ideal, dreamy type of thing. Um, and I love that for them. I think that that's hopefully going to stay with them till they get older so that they can really say, you know what? Yeah, there was one time I did meet somebody that did this, and it is possible. And I have seen it, as opposed to like me, I hadn't seen it, I hadn't seen anything. So
Mm.
I think that having an opportunity to work with the girls like that and just sort of be there and answer their questions because they're so curious about how things are done and hopefully plant the seed for them. that way maybe it grows into the new generation of fashion designers because that's what we need.
For sure. Yes, we do need it. That's awesome. Oh my
Yeah.
God, the time flew by
I
and
know.
we can be speaking more like because this conversation is so interesting. However, I would like to ask you to wrap up, what is your why, Pam? What is the reason that what keeps you excited?
So I would say my why that keeps me excited every day is honestly my genuine curiosity.
Mm,
It really is. I've asked myself this question so many times too, because I do think it's important that you're asking yourself that question and not just like when somebody asks you, you have an answer. I think you have to also ask yourself all the time, like, why am I still doing this? Or why do I do this? And number one for me is I still get really excited when I see people wearing stuff that I've worked on, you know what I mean? I really do. I could be anywhere at a random place and I see somebody wearing a jean that I know I did. Or even if I'm, like, doing research online, I've, like, gone into vintage, shops online, and I see stuff that I did for pennies when I was younger, and I love it. I'm just like, "Look, it's vintage," and people are being inspired by it, and they wanna buy it now, again.
mhm.
So of course, I have my family, and I do everything for them as well, so they are definitely my second why is, like, "Why do I
Mm,
do this? Why?" But I think most of it is genuinely I really love working with people, and I just love talking to people. I love hearing people's stories. That's probably, like, one of the biggest things for me,
mhm,
and I also being in this industry has let me meet people from all over the world
mm,
and get to work with them and create beautiful things and come up with great ideas and we have language barriers but we make it work and we figure it out and I think that that's also really beautiful.
mm,
And then I would say probably to my why is just because I love being able to provide something to a mass group of people that need access to just affordable, wonderful, good-looking clothes, and that also motivates me,
mhm,
because not everything has to be really expensive. You don't have to spend a lot of money to look good. And I feel lucky that I'm in a position where I get to design something for people that can have access to really wonderful fabrics, really good quality design. I mean, technically it's locally designed. We're here. And I mean, to me, it's like, what's better than that? You really get to have a hand, and affect so many people's
mm.
lives, really,
Yeah,
you
that
know?
is so powerful. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Pam.
of
It was a
course.
true pleasure speaking with you today. Really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your heart with us.
I love it. Thank you so much, Silvana. I really appreciate you inviting me. Hey, I can talk all night too, like you were saying. So if you want to do a part two, we could always talk about
I
other
was just
things.
thinking about that. We can do a part two for this because we
Yeah.
only touched the surface. But
I
let's
know.
talk about that. Yeah, for sure. Well,
Thank you.
thank you
Thank you so
for
much.
empowering young designers to be themselves and to be authentic and to
Hmm.
honor their journey and the story and the culture that we have, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And to everybody listening, if this episode inspired you, take a moment to follow Pamela's journey online. You'll find beauty, strength, and truth in everything she shares. And remember, never stop learning because growth isn't about doing more, it's about becoming more. Thank
Hmm.
you so much. Talk to you next
Thank
time. Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.